Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be talking about a huge storm that'll bring the risk of significant severe weather this weekend to parts of the United States. We'll also be talking about the drought-busting rain potential in parts of the United States this weekend. And lastly, the wildfire smoke has some improvement here across the United States. I'll be talking about more on that later in this forecast. But let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today. We're going to begin with the Great Plains. That is where there is a ton of convection today. This is all stemming just from a lot of moisture, a lot of instability. We're seeing some showers and storms popping up. You might notice over in Nebraska, there's really massive storms there. Once you start to see those dark red colors on the infrared imagery, that is indicating very cold cloud tops aloft, which usually indicates very strong, if not severe, thunderstorms ongoing there. Now, for the remainder eastern parts of the United States, it's been fairly dry. We have a low pressure system that's been spinning. For the most part, the eastern half of the United States has been dry. The only exception is Florida, and as well as back up into New England. That is where we are seeing some showers and storms this afternoon, but this is what's been basically bringing all that wildfire smoke into areas like the Northeast, the Ohio Valley. Some areas, even the Midwest, have seen this wildfire smoke, and that's going to continue over the next few days, but there is some good news ahead. I'll talk about more on that later in this forecast, but more importantly, the weather pattern that we've had in the United States has been absolutely wild. There is going to be a different weather pattern, though, over the next 7 days. We've had an omega block pattern. We have a massive high pressure system in the central United States, and then two low pressure systems on either side of the other parts of the United States. That essentially creates an omega block pattern. Now, right now, we are changing. So the high pressure system is actually back up into Canada now. We have a low pressure system over into the western half of the United States, and then we have our other low pressure system into the northeast United States. So we're going to see a bit of a corkscrew into the weather pattern over the next several days. So you'll notice going through this weekend and into early next week, we have a bit of a weird weather pattern. We're actually going to have two different low pressure systems to watch for, one of which will be in the southwest United States. This could bring significant severe weather sometime around mid next week across the Great Plains, and then another low pressure system in the Midwest. This could bring beneficial rainfall. In addition to this, it might even bring a threat for severe weather for those in the Midwest, Northeast, and Ohio Valley. So two very interesting areas. You might notice, where's the high pressure system? Well, there is a very weak high pressure system that'll be present in Canada, but it's not an omega block pattern anymore. We're changing out of that completely as we go into next week, and you'll notice going into the midweek around Tuesday, Wednesday or so, that is when we'll at least have some stronger upper level winds in the southern plains through the Ohio Valley. That will increase the risk for longevity with supercell thunderstorms that develop, and also back up into the northeast United States. We'll have that other low pressure system. This will likely increase some shower and storm activity, and this will also help the wildfire situation, bring some much needed rainfall to hopefully get those wildfires out of here. Once we go into late next week, things become more uncertain, but we very well could see more potent troughs start to enter the United States. These very well could bring some significant severe weather, but at this time, again, we are very far out from there. We'll keep you posted with those details. Now, one fascinating thing before I show you the severe weather threats over the next few days is the moisture content across the United States. It's going to be very interesting to watch this, but as we go into this weekend, you'll notice a very strong push down to the south of this moisture. That's because we'll have a high pressure system at the surface into Canada. So very interesting stuff here. We're going to have all that moisture basically concentrated over the Great Plains, and this will continue to move down to the south as that high pressure system strengthens in Canada. That's going to really create the potential for more severe weather across the southern parts of the United States, and as well as even potentially back through the southern Midwest. You'll notice where all the moisture is sitting now. It's in a more organized area. Before, over the last several weeks, we've had a high pressure system in the Midwest that's been spinning high pressure into areas like the Great Plains, and what that's essentially allowed is a very disorganized area of moisture around it. No organized low pressure systems have been able to come into the United States because of it, but now, since we're changing into a different weather pattern, we'll have a more concentrated area of moisture. That's very important for severe weather. And you'll notice as well, going into about Monday or so, moisture will start to kick into areas like Canada that desperately need that rainfall. So very good news there overall. That could very well limit the wildfire potential that's still ongoing there. Let's talk about the severe weather potential for the next several days. We're going to begin with today. It's not really much of a risk. It's more for tonight and the overnight. It's basically a prerequisite to what we're actually going to see tomorrow in terms of significant severe weather. As of right now, there is a slight risk of severe weather for those back in southwest Kansas and as well as the Oklahoma Panhandle. There are already showers and storms ongoing, many of which are severe. That is where we're seeing the significant damaging wind and hail potential. Very, very low risk of a tornado today. Tomorrow, though, becomes much more concerning. We are are watching a large area for a significant severe weather potential. You'll notice there's an enhanced risk of severe weather for those in North Texas, back through western and northwestern Louisiana, southwest Arkansas, and southern Oklahoma. There's also a slight risk for those across those same areas, even as far east as Mississippi. And the biggest concern right now for tomorrow is the large hail potential. Now, this is not an updated graphic. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the most updated graphic here, but we do have a hatched area for hail, which means there's a potential for upwards of 3-inch diameter hail in isolated locations across this large area. So it's a bit larger than what's shown here. That's going to include areas basically as far south as Waco, all the way back through southeast Oklahoma. But really, I would say the biggest concern is wherever those storms develop, and I'm going to show you in a moment what the current scenarios are for tomorrow, because there are multiple scenarios that could go down tomorrow. Also, for the damaging wind threat, we'll have the potential for flying trampolines without a doubt. Currently a high risk of flying trampolines. That's going to include areas anywhere in that red shaded region. That's where we could see scattered to numerous damaging winds upwards of 70 miles per hour. Outside of there in that slight risk area, that's going to be that 15% probability within a 25-mile radius. We definitely have a potential for some scattered damaging winds as well. Tornado risk right now is low. It's not very high right now. It's actually a little bit extended from this as well. It does go back through areas like Waco, but again, it's a very low risk for tomorrow. I would expect maybe at most 1 or 2 brief tornadoes. The low-level jet will be so weak tomorrow, it's almost an irrelevant risk at this point here across Texas. But again, it does exist. It's just very low at this time. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, there are multiple scenarios that could go down in North Texas and really across the southern plains tomorrow, and it's all going to depend on that first round of storms, because there will be 2 different rounds of storms. The first one will be during the mid to late morning. That'll begin really in Oklahoma, and it'll start to drift down into North Texas. So you'll notice that here, the HRR model is picking up on that storm activity. That is, again, with that line of storms. Now, if this is a small scale area of storms, which is what the HR model is showing along the Red River Valley and northwards, that would mean that we would see the potential for more significant severe weather during the afternoon and potentially more widespread. If we do see a bigger and more extensive line of storms that extends, let's just say in this area here, that moves through North Texas, this would mean the significant severe weather potential in the afternoon and evening would be a much lower chance. So it's going to all depend on what happens tomorrow morning. That'll determine the timing, coverage, and intensity of the supercells during the afternoon and evening. So you'll notice the HR model still shows some strong to severe storms during the late morning into the afternoon hours. Any of these storms will be mainly comprised of damaging winds, but there could be some large hail, maybe an isolated brief tornado, but I still think that risk is very low. By the afternoon and evening hours, things get very interesting here. So about 5 to 6 o'clock, we'll have storms popping up. Most likely where the storms will develop and really start to excel is going to be back just west of Interstate 35. The HR model indicates it's way back near Central Texas. I don't know if it'll be that far to the west. I think it'll be closer to DFW, but this by 7 to 8 o'clock, storms are rolling into areas like DFW and eventually going closer to 10 to 11 o'clock. That'll turn into a bit more of a line of storms, most of which are going to be producing damaging winds, but there could be some large hail, maybe an isolated tornado. But I want you to keep in mind, this is just one computer model run. We very well could see storms form somewhere else and be more intense or less intense than what's shown. I just want to throw that out there because, again, it all rides on what happens tomorrow morning. Now, the HR model, again, is picking up on that. This would have a very weak line of storms during the morning. That's what this is basically picking up on. And if that does end up happening, this, again, is a very realistic scenario. Here's a more widespread view of it. So, again, we'll have 2 different areas of storms. One up in Arkansas, mainly damaging winds for those areas, maybe some large hail. Another line of storms pushing through Louisiana. This is most likely just going to be damaging winds. You'll notice going into the evening and overnight hours, storms do start to move off to the east. Some severe weather still possible overnight, but the risk of severe weather in Louisiana and as well as Arkansas does remain low for the overnight hours at this time. If you found this weather forecast informative or if you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video down below and subscribe if you've not already.